and thank you everybody for turning out today. Look, as the community and public sector, our members work in all ranges of the public service, but importantly they work in prisons, they work in courts, they work in community corrections, and they touch the justice system in very many ways. What they do believe in is the same as you do today. What they want to build is communities and not prisons. What they want is a fair and just foundation for our society. And what they do believe in, that is just simply wrong to profit from the justice system and the law and order system of our society. A fundamental tenet of our society is that we need to treat people with respect and with dignity. That includes all people within our community. And it is wrong to make it a profit-making business. If we are going to punish, if we have laws, then we ought not to profit. Private interests ought not to profit from that process. So as a fundamental tenet, we believe it's simply wrong to privatise. We want to stand with you in the fight against privatisation. It's absolutely essential that you keep this campaign going. One of the real reasons why that's essential is, I think John earlier said, you wouldn't think a government would privatise courts. You wouldn't think a government would privatise other parts of the justice system. Well, I'm here today to tell you that the government is considering doing that. I have a bill. This is a bill that's intended to be introduced into Parliament later this year. This bill is about contracting community corrections, about contracting out the processes of supervising and monitoring and assisting and supporting people who are under community sentences. It's about contracting out the supervision, monitoring and enforcing of parole orders. Simply, again, wrong. They ought not be doing this, and we need to stop them. So you think that they would have learnt. You think that they would have learnt, wouldn't you? But clearly they haven't. Because in addition to this, just last week I also learnt that they're talking about contracting out victim support units in the courts. Again, wrong. And which companies do you think are constantly running into the Premier's office, seeking meetings, putting up submissions and being advocates for these privatisation proposals?
G4S and
Serco and G4S, yes. And they have already ruined the justice system in the UK. They've completely decimated it. Let us not let that happen here. Let's fight for a fair and just system, one built to be a foundation for our community and society, one that supports our community, not one that ruins it because profit becomes the all-important motive. Thank you.
G4S and Serco!
No!
G4S and Serco!
No!
G4S and Serco!
No!
Public service!
Yes!
Public service!
Yes!
Public service!
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Look, it's obvious. Companies that run private prisons, they're doing it for a profit. They abandoned their responsibility for public safety, as well as those who are put inside of them and those who work for them. I'd like to hand over to, and it's a great welcome to, honour to introduce John McManus from the Miscarriage of Justice organisation, Mojo, which is based in England. And John, together with Paddy Hill, who was wrongly jailed for 17 years for being a part of the burn-in 6. Now we can hear from John about the disaster of privatisation in England.
As I said, my name's John McManus. I run an organisation called the Miscarriages of Justice organisation. We set up about 17 years ago. Paddy Hill was released 20 years ago last Monday. On the 17 years, what we've seen in Britain is an increase in the prison population. When Paddy first went to prison, the prison population in the UK was 20,000. When he got out in 1991, it was 40,000. And now we're almost touching 90,000 people in prison. Majority of people who are going to prison are actually there for drug problems, and that's one of the main problems. what we're seeing is the privatisation's been coming in. The privatisation first came in through a company in America called Wackenhut. You probably find Wackenhut own either Serco or GS4. Wackenhut, when they were introduced into Texas, 18 months of serving in Texas, and a prison in Texas had a riot in the prison, and they refused to call out the state police. And they eventually did call out the state police after a couple of hours. And they were told the next time they send out the state police that they were going to have to charge them. So being a private prison, the next time there was a riot, which was about 2 months later, they never called out the state police. They were operating for 18 months. There was a death, a prison officer was murdered in that prison. It was the first death in 18 years in Texas. Texas of all counties, of all states, actually stopped Wackenhut from operating in Texas. They came over to Britain and they called themselves premier prisons. The first thing you've got to ask yourself, we live in a capitalist society, it's supply and demand. Where is the need for rehabilitation if we're going to bring in private prisons? Why would you would want to encourage recidivism? You want to give more heroin out in the community. You want people breaking into your houses more and more and more, because then they can fill their prisons up. What they also did in America, you'll find what they're doing, and they'll bring in here, is that when you're a hardcore prisoner, I mean you're a dangerous prisoner, you're a rapist, you're a psychopath, you're serial, he's taking up a unit for a year because that's the way the accountants see it. It's 1 unit for 1 year. If they can fill that with 3 short-term offenders over the year, they're making more profit. So you're seeing early releases for dangerous criminals so as they can fill up their prison with people who have got drug problems and other problems, because that's the way they make their money. Another thing about privatised prisons that really worries me is that I wouldn't mind if they actually went and raised the money themselves and ran the prisons for themselves, but they don't. It's all the taxpayers' money that's going to pay. It's not a private prison at all. It's taxpayers' money. What they're doing is finding ways to make a profit from the taxpayers' money to give to their shareholder. And that means that you see it everywhere you go. We saw it back in Britain in the NHS. Their services get worse and worse and worse. And I'm going to finish you with one thing to think of, and this is a politician should be really taking this on board. President Truman, when he left office in the 1950s, in his last speech in America, the American president warned the world about the military-industrial complex. He told the world that this was going to be the most dangerous thing ever to happen to us. And what the military-industrial complex meant was private companies making weapons. And what they would go on to do would be create their own wars. And this is what we see today. They create their own wars for the industrial complex. But what they're building in America, what they're building in Britain, and what they're building in Australia, from what I can see with the way your prisons are increased, is a judicial and penal industrial complex. But half the population are going to be seen as the enemy within, and the other half are going to be locking them up. And this is what you're seeing, more and more prisons are, your prison population is increasing, and they want to privatise it. This is a scary, scary situation. It's sad that there's no more people here, because back home, I'm sad to say that I work in a growth industry at a time when there's a downturn in the economy. And I don't mean to be joking about it, but it's true. We're seeing more, because of the rise in the prison population, we're seeing more and more innocent people going to prison. This is the 3rd time we've been out here in 15 months. We've now met up with some of the indigenous population, both here and over in Melbourne. What we would like to start looking at, and we've met up with an organisation here called Justice Western Australia. I would like to find out more miscarriages of justice within the indigenous population, because I think once you lift that rug up, you're going to see a hell of a lot of innocent people in prison in this country. And as Paddy Hill says, the greatest gift in life you've got is your freedom. Treasure it, because you never know when they'll take it away. Thanks very much.